Hello, good morning. My name's Joel Hufford and I'm your host today for this webinar from WaterSafe and Welsh Water to share advice on plumbing and keeping drinking water supplies healthy. That's particularly in the context of responsibilities of local authorities in relation to the water supply regulations. So today we're going to share some advice via films and from the panel and answering your questions. And also to say we are recording the webinar today, so we'll send you an online version of that you can access to watch back again, share with colleagues, just to spread the information around as well. So do make sure you share that with your colleagues, and thank you this morning to join us. First of all, I'm just going to go through the agenda for the day so you understand what we're going to talk about, and also just some housekeeping around how to use MS Teams, and importantly, how you can interact with us today in terms of questions and comments. So in terms of the webinar, we're going to meet the rest of the panel very shortly that you'll be hearing from, and then we'll get into the detail from the panel about the water regulations, and in particular, what they involve in terms of plumbing work you may need to notify Welsh Water about, why you need to do that, what can go wrong if it's not done properly, and also as well the ins and outs of how to notify and how you can save yourself some time by using an approved plumber under the National WaterSafe scheme. We've also got a quiz for you as well to test the knowledge that you've taken in hopefully throughout this session, and there'll be plenty of polls as well we'll be peppering throughout the agenda as well, just to get your views on things, test your knowledge and just get an idea of how things are going in this virtual room. So on to the housekeeping in terms of Teams. So many of you, I'm sure, familiar with Teams, but just do bear with us on that front in terms of the control panel you see on the slide in front of you. So if you're familiar with it, great. If not, I just thought it'd be helpful to run through. So if you could just make sure to keep your video and your mics off using those icons over towards the left of that panel there. If you do want to speak in terms of coming on camera and using your mic, raise your hand and we'll come to you as quickly as we can. And you see that box with the speech bubble, the chat box. That's very important because we want you to open that now, because we're going to be sharing links for the polls and that kind of thing via the chat box. You can click on them, fill out the polls, and then we go from there. And you can also use it to ask a question. So do click on that speech bubble at the top of your control panel so you've got the chat box open as well. So let's meet the rest of the panel you'll be hearing from today. We'll just give them a moment to turn their video and their mics on as well. And then we'll go around the room. So first of all, let's hear from Julie.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for that introduction. So I'm Julie Spinks. I'm a director of WaterSafe, which is the National Register for Qualified Plumbers, where plumbers have special qualifications in the water fittings regulations and bylaws. And I'm delighted here today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the water fittings regulations and indeed that requirement to notify.
Grand. Let's move on to our colleagues from Welsh Water. First of all, Gareth.
Yeah, good morning. Gareth Harris, Water Regulations Technical Manager here at Welsh Water. Basically, as a water supplier, we have a responsibility to enforce the regulations. There's different ways in which we do this, such as advice meetings, like the one we're doing today, by promoting the use of approved plumbers, by processing notifications that we receive into the business, and also through a proactive and reactive inspection programme. I'd just like to say before we start today that today is about starting a dialogue. It's about education and building relationships. It's not about pointing fingers or trying to accuse anybody of not doing something or not complying with the law.
Okay, that's great from Gareth, and let's hear from Adam as well.
Lovely, thank you, Joel. So my name's Adam Jones. I'm a technician with the Water Regulations Department at Welsh Water. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. So what we are here to achieve this morning is to provide you with an awareness of the notification requirements under the regulations, but to tie on from Gareth's message there, more importantly, we are here to introduce ourselves and to offer our help and support in regards to compliance to these regulations and to ultimately help to keep our water safe and our customers safer.
Okay, great. Thank you to Adam as well. We hear from the panel throughout the session, and make sure to put your questions to them, whether that's popping up on camera and on mic, or if you want to use the chat box. Speaking of which, if you click on that speech bubble icon at the top of your screen, you'll see in the chat that I've posted the link to the opening poll of the session. So that's 3 quick questions. Are you responsible for plumbing/water fittings in public buildings? What type of buildings are you responsible for? And how much do you know about the water supply regulations? So if you just want to take a few moments to fill out those questions, multiple choice answers, and then we'll review the answers very shortly. just as the responses come in. And just a reminder as well as the recording of the webinar we'll be sharing round today. You can find lots of information on the WaterSafe website. That's watersafe.org.uk. And also there's plenty of information via the Welsh Water team. And again, we'll give you the contact details for those very shortly. So let me just share my screen in terms of the results from the quiz, or rather the poll. We'll just have a quick look at those. Just waiting for the system to update, which is always a bit of a nerve-wracking moment. So we've got a few answers coming through. Do keep them coming in. And we've got plenty of polls for you today on this webinar from Welsh Water and also WaterSafe as well. And again, in particular, obviously with the pandemic situation, it looks like these kind of sessions will be carrying on for some months to come. So again, if there's any feedback that you've got around how these sessions work for you, then that would be good to share as well. So just give people a few more moments just to fill in the poll questions. Got 5 responses in so far, and then we'll review those. And just a reminder what we're talking about today. We're going to go through the water supply regulations in a bit more detail with Julie very shortly, and then we'll talk to Gareth and Adam just around the notification process, how it works, why it is important to follow, how to do it, some case studies of what happens if things go wrong. And we're going to round off with the benefits to you as local authority colleagues of using approved plumbers under the WaterSafe scheme as well. We've got a couple of films to show you as well. And again, those films we'll make available via YouTube so you can take those in. So I'll just refresh the results one more time, see how many responses we've got in. So I think we've got probably as many people are going to fill out the poll as we're going to get this morning. So let's look at the first one. So are you responsible for plumbing, water fittings in public buildings? 6 of you say yes, 1 of you says no. In terms of the types of buildings that people are responsible for, it's quite a mix. We've got quite a few people responsible for schools, libraries, civic buildings, offices, community centres, but also refuse and recycling sites, leisure centres and swimming pools, libraries, care homes, and a couple of others as well, which we'll get to very shortly. And how much do you know about the water supply regulations? Nobody knows everything, which is good to know in terms of this webinar and raising your awareness. I know a good amount for 1 person. I know enough is the majority with 3, and I know a little bit with 2, and I don't know anything at all is from 1 person. So it's just to get a sense of what knowledge there is in the room already, and we'll hopefully increase that for you on this webinar today. So let's move into the first part of the presentation. So we're going to get started with something that everyone who owns or manages a property needs to know: the water supply, brackets, water fittings, close brackets, regulations, and how they affect you. And Julie is going to give us a quick overview on the regulations and why they're important for local authorities in particular. So Julie, it's over to you.
Thanks, then, Joel. So I think Rebecca's just going to be putting up my slides for me. So indeed, what the water fittings regulations and indeed their bylaws in Scotland. If you'd move on to the next slide for me, Rebecca, that would be great. Well, the regulations have been in for about 20 years. They are a good set of regulations that are aimed to prevent contamination of the water supply, waste, which means it shouldn't leak or you shouldn't have faulty fittings, misuse, so you shouldn't use products for a purpose for which they weren't designed, undue consumption, which is using more water than you need for a purpose, and then finally erroneous measurement, which I always think is a very posh word to say theft. So if you move on, that's the overall purpose of the regulations. The next slide shows where they apply. So the key thing is it has to be water that's supplied by a public supply, so therefore a water company. So for in Wales, either Welsh Water or Hafren Dyfrdwy. And where do they apply? They apply from the boundary of the property. So they cover that supply pipe as they go. It comes underground and it covers all the plumbing inside the premises as well. So if we just move on to the next slide. Perfect. So what do the actual regulations do? Well, they cover design, installation and operation of the water fittings and water systems and appliances connected to the public water supply. So that appliances means they do cover things like dishwashers and washing machines, as well as all the pipes, taps, fittings, boilers, heating supplies. So they're very broad in their application. Essentially, they say that we must install products that are a suitable quality and standard. So suitable quality standard means they're tested so that they won't contaminate and won't leak. So going back to the purpose of the regulations, and they have to be done in something called a workmanlike manner. So how you might do something in a workmanlike manner is to install things against a British standard, for example, or an approved installation method. So a relevant British standard here might be British Standard 806, which sets out some good design principles for plumbing inside buildings. Thirdly, water must remain wholesome for domestic use. That sounds like a really good idea to me, because you might be drinking the water and bathing it and consuming it. They also require the person commissioning the work to notify some types of work to their enforcement body. And finally, who has to comply? Well, the duty to comply is actually really quite broad. It's people who even use the water, owners, occupiers, and anyone who installs water fittings or water use appliances to comply. The other thing I'll just mention in passing, because it's very relevant to Wales, because there's quite a lot of supplies that are on the public supply, which won't be covered by these regulations. However, if you have a building which has a dual supply, so that you have a public water supply coming in and you might have a supply by a borehole, for example, then the water fittings regulations will definitely apply, and they will be considered more high risk premises as well. So if you can just move on to the next slide for me. That's perfect. So this seems an obvious question to me, but why should anyone care about plumbing? Why did they put in these regulations in the first place? And I've got a few quick examples to take you through. That one, you can see a tap where water's going backwards from a fairly unpleasant looking sink. So if we move on to the next slide. So, and these are incidents and things that have happened here in Wales as well. So lead solder has been banned for use with wholesome water systems since the 1970s. However, it can still be used in things like closed circuit secondary heating systems, and therefore plumbers often have both lead and unleaded solder in their kit. It's quite an easy mistake. They look very similar in this picture. We've both got leaded and unleaded on the screen, and I think it'd be quite difficult without a quick test to tell which is which. And a very tiny amount of lead solder can have a big impact. Here we have blue water that's originated from a toilet cistern, not the pan, but still bad enough. And that's a perfect illustration of where there isn't good backflow prevention to stop water going in the wrong direction to which it was intended. And there's a low pressure event in the property as well, which could be, in this case, was an apartment, somebody else in the building using a tap at the same time enabled that to happen. So all perfectly avoidable. And then my third example, if we just move on, a very uncharismatic squirrel, I think, stuck in a drinking water tank or cistern. And of course, there are rules within the requirements of these regulations that require there to be covers and protection from insects and animals getting into areas where, unfortunately, they'll drown and they can contaminate the water. So we just move on to the next slide, Rebecca. Clearly, where you've got a good set of regulations, you always need enforcement as well. And that enforcement is by the water companies who are appointed for that local area of supply. But they have quite a lot of tools in their toolkit. So not everything ends up with prosecution. In fact, where they start and spend most of their time is education and advice and help. That's what this webinar is about today. They might give advisory and warning letters. Quite common is that they will give a water fittings notice, and that will require the work to be put right where contraventions are found. A primary legislation notice under the Water Industry Act would mean that Welsh Water in this case could come in and put the work right and recharge. They're also able to give simple cautions and a very small number of cases that are in the public interest that might lead to prosecution. So just moving on to the next slide. If we just move back, so that's just the end of my presentation. So that's a real whistle-stop tour of the water fittings regulations. I hope that covers everything, Joel.
Lovely. Thank you to Julie. And remember, if you've got any questions for Julie or Gareth or Adam, you can post them in the chat box, that little speech bubble at the top of your screen, or you can stick your hand up and we can put you on camera and with your mic on, should you feel that's the best way to ask the question. And there's plenty of information via watersafe.org.uk in terms of just general information about the water regulations and notifications. And a little bit later on, we'll give you the direct contact details for the Welsh Water team So again, if you can get in touch with them, if you've got any queries or any comments, you can have a chat with them separately as well. Let's move on to the next part, and there's one particular part of the water regulations we'd like to talk about today. That's Regulation 5. And what's Regulation 5, I hear you ask? It's about notifying plumbing work to Welsh Water in advance, how this can help save you time and money, as well as safeguard the water supplies that you're responsible for. Let's hear from Gareth Harris on this. And Gareth, if you can just give us a bit of an overview of the notification process, why it's important, roughly how it works, and again, what responsibilities our local authority colleagues may have in relation to that and their interactions with you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Joel. So basically, work that needs to be notified can be split into two distinct areas. So anything from building a new premise to doing work on an existing premise. So when applying for a new connection with Welsh Water, the notification process is built into the new connection application. So it's all done as one application. But the area where notification is probably lacking for us is on existing premises. So where major alterations are being undertaken, for example, on a school, or where fire sprinkler systems are being installed on a block of flats, for example. This type of work should be notified to Welsh Water in advance. The process of notification is straightforward. There's a form to fill out, which is available from the Welsh Water website. And we'll ask for additional things like drawings and plans of what the proposal is, and potentially a list of fittings that are being proposed to be installed as well. And again, by submitting the notification, you're essentially getting a free consultation on the proposal from Welsh Water. We'll have a look at that, we'll review it, and we'll let you know of anything that's being proposed if it's non-compliant, and what needs to be done in order to make it compliant. And usually it will often come out and do an inspection once that installation has been completed as well.
Okay, great. Thank you to Gareth. And again, if you've got any questions, Gareth and Adam are on hand today to answer them either via the chat box, or you stick your hand up and we can put you on camera or mic, or again, we'll share their contact details very shortly so you can get in touch with them, perhaps once you've had a chance to take the information in, chat to colleagues. And again, just a reminder, we're recording the webinar session, so with a little bit of tidying up in terms of editing, we'll put it out online for you to view and for you to disseminate with your colleagues as well, just in terms of raising their awareness too. Right, time for our next poll. I've posted the link to it in the chat box, so if you go to the little speech bubble icon at the top of your screen, click on there, you'll see the latest poll available to you, and I will just get the results page shared as well very shortly, and then we'll move on to the next section. Got a couple of films to keep you entertained as well, so hopefully those will be coming through for you very shortly too. Time to fill in that poll, and you should be seeing the results screen on my computer popping up in your feed on this webinar this morning. So we'll just wait for the responses to come through. We've got a few responses coming through already, which is good. So we'll just give people a few more moments to fill that in. So a reminder of the questions. Does your organisation notify under the building regulations? Did you know you need to notify for water regulations? And has your organisation ever notified under the water fittings regulations? So those are the the questions that we're asking you to fill in today. So we've got 6 responses in. So I'll just give people a couple more moments just to fill it in, and then we'll move on with the next section of the webinar. Once again, thank you for taking the time for joining us this morning. And again, in particular, we would welcome your feedback on this session, and with the pandemic ongoing and more sessions being held like this, how well this has worked for you and whether you found it a useful exercise. So one more refresh of the results page, and then we'll crack on with reviewing the results. So it looks like 6 people is as much as we're going to get so far. So does your organisation notify under building regulations? 1 person says yes, 1 person says no, but the majority 4 don't know, not sure. Number 2, did you know you need to notify for water regulations? 1 person says yes, 3 people said no, and 2 people say they don't know, not sure. And then the final one, has your organisation ever notified under the water fittings regulations? Nobody says yes. 1 person says no, and 5 people don't know, not sure. So again, that's all part of this exercise, is really about increasing your particular knowledge in this area to benefit you, your colleagues, the people using your buildings, and of course the Welsh Water team. So let's move on to the next part of the webinar. Exactly which types of plumbing work do you need to notify in advance? We've got a short film we put together to show you what you need to do. Okay, so a little film there just to explain the notification process. And again, we'll be distributing the links to those films that will be available via the WaterSafe YouTube channel very shortly, along with the recording of this webinar. Let's just go into a little bit more detail about some of the information we saw in that film with Adam Jones from Welsh Water. So just give Adam a moment to pop up on camera. And Adam, could you talk about the types of work that were highlighted in that film? What are the ones that you see most notified to Welsh Water?
Thanks, Joel. So typically the most common notified works that we receive in Welsh Water are tying on from what Gareth spoke about earlier, is premises or installations, applying for a new water connection. That is the most common notifications that we receive at the moment, where that application is obviously built into the notifications process then, whereby then that application comes through to us in the water regs team, and then we assess it for its risk and relevant compliance to the water regulations. However, through increased awareness and promotion recently, we're starting to receive some more notifications regarding the extension or alteration of non-domestic systems. So that may be where in schools or other public buildings whereby you are having a rainwater or drinking water fountain system installed. But to tie back to the purpose of this notification webinar then is to make you aware of the requirements to notify certain types of work to us at Welsh Water.
And presumably the types of work that you do need to notify, that's because they are ones that could have higher risks attached to them in terms of contamination from perhaps backflow from a drinking water fountain that wasn't installed properly, or a rainwater harvesting system where again there's an inadvertent cross connection into the main water supply.
That's correct, yeah. So following the notifications process, we will stay in touch with the customer or the developer regarding the installation, offering help and support when necessary. And then once the installation has been complete, one of our trained local regulations officers then will come out to site and to inspect the completed installation, whereby we will be assessing the site for its associated risks. So to give you an example of the properties that have different associated risks compared to others, that might be places like hospitals and care homes have a higher level of associated risk due to the nature of the vulnerable patients that are within the premises. So it's vital that the water systems there are safe and compliant. And then other local authority premises then that we would be considered to have that higher level of associated risk would be premises like schools, colleges, and perhaps leisure centres, sports facilities, and recycling and waste centres as well.
Okay, thank you to Gareth. Gareth, do stay with us, or sorry, Adam, if you stay with us. And then Gareth, if you want to pop up as well, because we've got the guys to talk through a couple of case studies to help illustrate why it's a good thing to work with Welsh Water and notify and comply with the regulations. So Gareth, if we can start with your case study, very topical in the midst of the pandemic that we're going through at the moment. It regards one of the Nightingale hospitals that has been set up locally, and again, a water regulations issue that you work with them on.
Yeah, that's right, Joel. So we did a lot of work back earlier this year, March, April time, with a lot of different organisations in setting up the Nightingale field hospitals. So the initial part obviously was dealing with notifications and finding out exactly what sort of work was going to be undertaken. A lot of these Nightingale hospitals involved converting existing premises, so a change of use. So this is exactly the type of work we need to be notified about in order to ensure that everything is done correctly. So on receipt of those notifications, we assessed all the paperwork, the drawings, the proposed installations, and then following that, we did on-site inspections. The advantage of this was when the officers got to site, they'd already had a chance to review the drawings, so they knew what they were looking for. They knew the higher risk areas. Some infringements were identified where the installers hadn't correctly followed the drawings and specifications, so it just showed the value of giving us that notification. We knew what should be there and we knew where to look for the high risk instances. So those contraventions then were quickly highlighted and quickly rectified to ensure full compliance. At the end of the day, these hospitals were potentially going to have vulnerable people in them, so it's all about protecting public health, obviously keeping our network safe, but even more importantly, keeping our customers safer.
Okay, thank you to Gareth. And Adam, if I can turn to you, you've got a case study regarding a swimming pool and again a water regulations issue, and we've got a slide just to illustrate the points you're going to be talking through. So can you just take us through this? Adam, you're on mute, I think, still.
My apologies. So to talk about the installation that we have on screen right now, what we are looking at is an installation within a public swimming pool. So the premises here receives both a private borehole supply as well as a mains cold water supply from the local water undertaker. So, for example, the private borehole supply might be used to flush things such as toilets, where it's obviously just needed a grey water supply. But then the mains cold water supply then would be used to feed wholesome applications such as cooking and drinking. However, with the installation on screen, there is a serious contamination risk posed by the installation that we have. Private supplies, such as the borehole supply that we have on screen, will be classed as a fluid category 5 risk under the water regulations. And whilst private supplies are perfectly acceptable for a water installation, there cannot be a cross connection between this private supply and the mains water supply. So how could this risk be eliminated? So with the work that they undertook on the premises, it would have been notifiable under the water regulations, because the work that they are carrying out is extending or altering a non-domestic system. So whereby if we were notified of the intention to carry out this work, we could have advised the premises and the developer of the contravention that they were unknowingly intending to install, and then we could have put that right then on receipt of the application to ultimately save them time and money in regards to rectifying that work then.
Okay, thank you to Adam and to Gareth once again. The guys will be back very shortly just to talk more about the detail of what we're going through today. If you've got any questions, do stick your hand up via the icon at the top of your screen. You can pop up on camera and mic and have a quick chat, or you can put a question in the chat box. Some more information by the chat box very shortly. First of all, we've got another film for you. We've heard why it's a good idea to notify in terms of water regulations. How do you actually bring it? You might have some notification work coming up, new plumbing at a school, converting a house into a care home, installing a rainwater harvesting system. So how do you actually notify to Welsh Water? Here's a little video to tell you how to do it. Okay, so again, a little film just to keep you updated. And again, that film and all the others you see today, plus the webinar recording, will make available to you online. So you can watch them back, you can share them with colleagues and raise awareness. And again, you've got the details there for getting in touch with the likes of Gareth and Adam at Welsh Water to have a chat about water regulations. Also in the chat, I posted the link which you may want to copy and bookmark now just to the notifications page on the Welsh Water website. So again, that's where all the information is, all the forms are, all the contact points for the team at Welsh Water headquarters for you to have a chat to. So on the back of that, let's hear from Gareth once again, and we're just going to talk about once you've been given the go-ahead in terms of notification, or you haven't heard back within the 10-day waiting period, and you go ahead with the work, you must make sure it complies with the regulations still. And can you tell us a bit more about that, Gareth, and again, why it's important? You've got permission to go ahead, but it's right that the work is done correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Joel. So it's fairly simple. Must comply with the regulations, and again, as Julie touched on earlier, that is most importantly to prevent contamination of the water supply, but also to prevent waste, misuse, undue consumption, or of course the stealing of water, erroneous measurement. So basically, once you've submitted a notification, if we don't write back to you within 10 working days detailing any specific conditions, then you can go ahead with the installation. Consent is deemed to have been granted for that. However, as I've just said, it must still comply with the regulations. And one or two things that often get forgotten are things that might seem basic and trivial, but things like insulation and marking of pipework. So the insulation can prevent the undue warming of the cooled water supply, which could potentially lead to the growth of bacteria, things like Legionella within the pipework. And again, from an efficiency point of view, the insulation of the hot water pipe will save money through not losing the heat in that pipework. And also the marking of pipeworks as well. This again is very important. This allows people who come in at a later date to identify what sort of systems they're looking at and ensure they don't cross-connect those systems.
Okay.
Other things to consider as well, sorry Joel, are things like the fixtures and fittings that are used. They should be suitable for the use. And again, once that installation is complete, as I alluded to earlier, we'll come out and we'll do an inspection of that once it's all installed.
Okay, thank you to Gareth. Gareth, do stay with us. And Judy, if you want to pop up on camera, we're going to talk now about once you're on the point of needing to get the work done, there's an easy way to be more confident that your work will be done right first time. And that means you don't necessarily need to have to notify for some works in advance in some cases as well. That's by employing an approved plumber to cut to the chase in terms of how you can achieve that. Julie, can you just tell us a bit more about WaterSafe, approved plumbers, and also the benefits of using them, and also how it can make things a little bit easier, more straightforward in getting work done, and you've got that assurance it's been done properly as well?
Great, that would be, I'd love to do that. Thanks, Joel. The first thing I probably ought to say about WaterSafe is WaterSafe was set up by water companies, is funded by water companies to help people comply, and there's no extra additional cost for plumbers when they take part in WaterSafe. So it hasn't been set up as a commercial organisation. It's really designed to help people get access to plumbers that are qualified. So the first point about WaterSafe is that we screen the plumbers to make sure they've got a basic plumbing qualification, but also that they have a specific qualification, the water fittings and regulations, so that they know how to apply them. Also, a big advantage is they don't have to notify some types of work. So if you remember from that video, we need to give 10 days in advance before you start work. That's quite a long time to wait. So it would be a big advantage to be able to not notify for particular types of work. And once the work's done, every plumber should issue a work completed certificate. So that is them saying, I've completed this in compliance with the regulations. So that's useful. You do certainly get that within the building regulations as well. It's good to get that clarification, that certificate. And that does provide some legal defence in terms of prosecutions. Of course, if there was contraventions, you'd still have to put it right, and those costs would be with you. The plumbers themselves are audited. And in fact, if Welsh Water came along and found out that actually there was a problem with the work and they needed to put it right, our membership scheme requires that they go back and put that right. And in fact, if they didn't, then they'd be sanctioned with disciplinary action, and then they could leave the scheme. So there are some safeguards with the system as well. So that's at least 4 good reasons to use a WaterSafe approved plumber.
And if, for example, you're dealing with a plumber, let's call him Nobby Smith, for example, and Nobby says it's fine, I'm WaterSafe approved, how can the local authority colleagues out there check that easily and quickly in terms of he's telling the truth and he is approved?
Well, that's the good thing about the WaterSafe directory is in the public domain. So you can just pop the name of their business online on watersafe.org and just check that they're actually approved. And any doubt, we've got a telephone number, or you can contact us on the web as well. So you can check out that they are who they say they are.
Okay, thank you to Julie. Gareth, turning to you. Julie mentioned the types of work that an approved plumber can carry out without advance notification. Can you just tell the colleagues out there from local authorities a bit more about that?
Yeah, no problem at all. The key one here is the alteration to any non-domestic premises. So approved contractors can do that work and self-certify it. However, bearing in mind what we've just been talking about and some of the larger jobs, I would always encourage local authorities to engage with us, even if they're using an approved contractor, especially where the modifications are extensive. That way we can also work with you and vet those applications and those proposals up front. But yes, alterations in non-domestic can be done by an approved contractor.
Okay, and much more information on watersafe.org.uk and the Welsh Water notification web pages as well. Thank you to Julia and Gareth for now. We're going to move into the quiz section of the webinar. So I'm just going to post the link to the quiz in the chat box. So again, go to the little speech bubble icon at the top of your screen. You've got the link there to the quiz. So there's a question there about work at a school, work in a hospital, work in terms of putting a rainwater harvesting system into some offices, a dishwasher being installed at a nursing home, a church being converted into a community drop-in centre, and a nursing home that's going to have an extension with some plumbing work on there. So if you click on that link, and we'll go through the answers with Adam and Gareth very shortly. In the meantime, just to give you a bit of a visual reminder of some of the information that you've heard already. In terms of the Welsh Water team, you can see their names and contact details on the screen there for you now. So Gareth and Adam, and it's waterregulations@duacumri.com. And again, we'll circulate these details with the online links to the webinar recording and the videos you've seen and the slide deck as well afterwards. So anyone who's signed up for the webinar will send that out, and also you can circulate it to colleagues as well. And in terms of the WaterSafe website, again, just a reminder of the address there, watersafe.org.uk. Loads of information on there about approved plumbers, the benefits of using them, tracking one down in your local area, and also as well, lots of information about the process that we've talked about today. So let's just see how we're getting on with the quiz answers, and then Adam and Gareth will help me go through those answers with you. So we've had a couple of responses so far. Hopefully a couple more people joining in there. In fact, we've had 6. So if I can just ask Gareth and Adam to pop up on camera, and we'll go through the answers with people now. Right, so I think we're starting with Adam. So Adam, a school is planning to replace the hand wash basin and taps in its staff room single toilet with like-for-like products. Is this notifiable? What's the correct answer?
It is not notifiable because the 4 people are correct there, because it's a like-for-like swap essentially, so it is not notifiable.
Well, the good news there is that most people, 5, got it correct, and a couple of people don't know, not sure. Nobody said yes, which is good to see. Let's move to Gareth. Second question, a local hospital is planning to extend its surgical wing, including the installation of medical washing facilities. Is this notifiable? And the correct answer is?
The correct answer is yes, it would be. So as I just alluded to a few moments ago, extension or alteration of a non-domestic premise would be notifiable. And again, particularly with a hospital, it's potentially high risk with vulnerable people there as well.
So the good news is most people knew that was the case. So yes, 5 people answered, and 1 that had don't know, not sure. But again, this is all about learning, education, raising awareness. If you've got any questions, go to the websites, get at Welsh Water, and they can have a conversation with you. Let's move back to Adam. To be more sustainable, Toy Town Council is installing a new rainwater harvesting system on its offices to flush the toilets. As it doesn't always rain, the toilets will also be connected to the public water supply. Is this notifiable?
Yes, it would be notifiable. And to draw back to the swimming pool example that we talked about earlier, we would have to make sure that there's no cross connections between the private and public supply. So well done to those who got it correct.
Yeah, and that was the majority of people. So I think it was 5 that got it correct, yes. And again, 1 person don't know, not sure. Back to Gareth. A dishwasher in a nursing home is broken down. The maintenance team installs a new dishwasher of the same brand and model. Again, is this notifiable?
So again, we wouldn't be looking for notification for this. So the correct answer would be no. Again, if it's the same brand and model, no problem. However, if you were looking at installing a different brand, a different model, it's always worth checking that model has adequate backflow protection in it. And again, questions and advice, you can always come to ourselves at Welsh Water just to cover that off as well.
Okay, thanks. And again, the majority of people got that correct. So 6 said no, it's not notifiable. One person didn't know, wasn't sure. Adam, an old church is being converted into a community drop-in centre. Is this notifiable?
Yes, it would be notifiable under Regulation 5, and that is what we would consider a change of use within the premises. So it is notifiable.
And again, most people got that correct. 5 said yes, 2 people said they didn't know, weren't sure. And then last but far from least, back to you, Gareth. A nursing home is intending to build an extension which will involve extending and altering the plumbing system. Is this notifiable?
Again, yes, it would be. So well done to those who got it right. Again, a premise where we potentially have vulnerable people. We'd just like to know that that plumbing installation is going to be compliant and not risk any contamination to the water supply and therefore cause a public health risk. So again, well done to those who got it right.
Yeah, that was a majority. 6 said yes, and 1 person who didn't know, wasn't sure. So thanks very much for taking part in that particular quiz there. We've got one last poll for you, which I'll post very shortly. Gareth and Adam, stay with us. Julie, if you just want to pop up on camera very briefly as well. So Julie, again, we're coming towards the end of the webinar session. We're going to do the closing poll, and then we're going to end with a film, again, just highlighting the benefits of using an approved plumber. What would be your key messages to the people who've tuned in today, and for the people watching the recording, in terms of following the water regulations and notification under those regulations in particular?
I mean, I think that the regulations can seem a bit daunting and a bit complicated. I think 2 easy things to think about is, one is, if you're going to get work done, get somebody who's properly qualified. That will help you in the longer term. And 2, if you're really not sure about whether to notify or not, they're pretty friendly. Gareth, Adam and the rest of the team at Welsh Water, pick up the phone and ask a question, and you can always check. They don't mind questions at all about notification or any other aspects of the water fittings regulations.
And Gareth, just to pick up on that point that Julie made and you made right at the start, this isn't about catching people out, taking people to court. This is all about, that pyramid that Julie showed on her slide. It's very much about engagement, education, partnership working to ultimately benefit everybody, and in particular, vulnerable people that might be using premises where you want to make sure that the plumbing system is safe.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I said it at the beginning, I'll re-emphasize it again now. Today is about education. It's about hopefully building some working relationships. I've no doubt some of the people on today have come across some of our regulations officers out in the field who are out there doing their job of ensuring that systems are compliant. In addition to those guys out there, we have a team in the office, a dedicated team who are there to answer any questions, deal with notifications, and again, just to run things by. Prevention is better than cure, as far as I'm concerned. So if we can deal with things up front, it's going to be much easier than having to deal with things out in the field at a later date.
Okay, thank you to Gareth, thank you to Adam, thank you to Julie for the contributions today. Thank you to you for attending. Do stay with us though. I've posted in the chat box, or rather the chat trail down the side of your screen. If you click that bubble icon, speech bubble icon at the top of your screen, the link to the final poll, which is just our closing poll, just really to find out from you how you found the webinar in terms of increasing your knowledge, and also just about the session in itself as an online briefing, whether you found that helpful. I'll just share the screen once again with the results on. If you could fill out that poll, that would be fantastic. And then we can go through the results. Then we're going to finish with another film, just highlighting the benefits of using an approved plumber. And again, just a reminder, we will post the recording of this webinar for you to view shortly. Do share it with colleagues. Do highlight the watersafe.org.uk web address with them as well. And do make sure to get in touch with the guys at Welsh Water if there's anything that you're not sure about. I'm just waiting for my system to stop having a funny 5 minutes. And we'll be with you very shortly with the results. So there we go. In terms of the closing poll, we've had 6 responses. So how much do you now know about the water supply regulations? One person says, I know everything. A couple of people say, I know a good amount. A couple of people say, I know enough. 3 say, I know a little. Everybody, or so rather nobody, says, I don't know anything. So that's good. So I think we have moved people up that scale of knowledge in terms of the water supply regulations, which is good to hear. How have you found this webinar session? 5 people say it's been great. So that's really. A couple of people say it's been good. One person said it's okay. Nobody thought it wasn't great. Nobody thought it was awful, and nobody didn't know, wasn't sure. So again, it's great that you found it helpful. If there's anything in particular you think we could improve upon, do let us know. And would you be interested in attending other WaterSafe Welsh Water webinars on relevant subjects in the future? Everybody who replied said yes. So again, that is fantastic to hear. So once again, thank you from us to you in terms of taking the time to attend this webinar today. We're going to leave you with a film now. It's about, if you do need a plumber, all the UK water companies, including Welsh Water and the drinking water regulators, they advise choosing one who's registered with WaterSafe. And here's a film to tell you why that's important.
How do you pick a proper plumber? They come in all varieties: high-tech, old school, big brand, small business, recommended by a friend or mate next door. But the best way to keep your drinking water safe is to pick a plumber approved by WaterSafe. WaterSafe is backed by all the water companies in the UK and the drinking water regulators. The NHS uses WaterSafe approved plumbers. That's because clean water is fundamental to good health and is at the heart of our daily activities: drinking, cooking, and washing. Take a chance on your installer and you could pay the price. Not just with the health of your water, it costs an average of £426 to fix a botched plumbing job. With WaterSafe, you have complete peace of mind about your plumber's training and a commitment their work meets safety standards. Visit watersafe.org.uk and enter your postcode to find your local WaterSafe approved plumber.